Is there such a thing as a dieting plateau? Can you be in a calorie deficit and consistently losing weight, then all of a sudden, bang, you stop losing weight for no apparent reason? You've not really changed what you're doing. You've not necessarily gone off track with your diet or anything like that. But for some reason, everything's just ground to a halt and you can't figure out why the fuck that would have happened. Well, this particular episode of the show is all about dieting plateaus because they are a real thing, but there's no need to panic because there's a few simple tips that I'm going to take you through over the course of this particular episode of the show so that you can make sure that A, you are aware of when a dieting plateau might happen so you can start to predict what you need to do, but also how to actually deal with it if you are there right now. Now, if we talk about weight loss plateaus, fat loss plateaus, what's actually going on here? Well, there's a number of different things that could be happening in your specific situation that has caused fat loss to grind to a complete halt. Not necessarily the gain train, but it's the fat loss train that's come to a stop and it looks like it's freaking broken down. So how do we actually figure out what's going on? Now, one of the key things to remember is that a slowdown in your metabolism or a reduction in your metabolism is absolutely perfectly normal and expected when you start to lose weight. Now, this is a factor of the fact that if you weigh more, then your BMR or your theoretical basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories that you need just to sustain normal functions of the body, is going to be higher than if you weigh less. So someone who is 100 kilos, if all other factors are the same, someone comparing them to someone who's 90 kilos, the 90 kilo person would have a lower BMR. This is just common things. This is just the way shit works. Now, if you started off at 100 kilos and you've lost 10 kilos, then theoretically your BMR is going to be lower than when you started. That means that you are burning less calories than when you started. So your calorie deficit over time, if all variables are the same, is actually reducing. So you need to do something during this process to make sure you're maintaining that calorie deficit that you need in order to sustain continued weight and fat loss. The other thing that's going on is something called metabolic adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis, to give it another posh sounding name, which might be very, very confusing for you. Now, this process is actually fairly simple, and it's actually fairly simple to try and get around. Now, metabolic adaptation is where your body starts to get more efficient with the lower calories that you give it. Now, by that I mean it might be something to do if you're someone at work who drums their feet under the desk, which is highly fucking annoying for everyone around you. That's kind of subconscious movement that maybe you're not specifically thinking about doing, but you're just doing it. Those sorts of fidgeting type movements will actually start to reduce and stop the further and further you go into a calorie deficit, because your body is kind of saying to itself, well, I don't need to do this fucking drumming under the desk. I'm no John Bonham. So I'm just going to reduce this and save some energy because we're on less calories and let's use these other calories for other things. You also might start to feel more lethargic. So you may not really be aware of it, but your activity outside of the gym might just start to reduce because you're feeling a little bit tired. You can't be asked to go and be as active outside of the gym as you might normally be. So therefore, again, the amount of calories that you're burning is starting to reduce and reduce over time. Now, if left long enough, that means that you could effectively wipe out your calorie deficit or make it so small that progress seems to move at a snail's pace. They're the two things that are really going on, the two main things that are actually happening. There's lots of other stuff that could be happening as well in terms of, are you actually adhering to your diet? Are you going off track with what you're actually putting into your face? That could be a whole thing as well. But for now, we'll park that to one side and assume you're on track in terms of what you're eating. One thing that is not going on is starvation mode and metabolic damage. These are two myths that exist and don't seem to want to die, but let's talk about them. Now, Starvation mode is kind of this theory that if your calories are too low, then your body will conserve body fat and will mean that you won't actually lose weight. This is bollocks, because you could ask someone in a World War II POW camp if they, when they were on a starvation diet, actually starved or their body retained fat. I can tell you, if you have a calorie deficit for long enough and drastic enough, you will die from starvation. You won't have this retention of body fat. So that is a complete myth. And also, in terms of metabolic damage, it's not really a thing either. Again, it's probably this process of metabolic adaptation that is happening here. And if you just basically eat more, you can recover those things that are happening. So we've got that out of the way, let's look at what is actually going on. So if we are in this stage where you have reduced your body weight and now you weigh less, then you've kind of got really two options to go down. Either you can start to have a process whereby you adjust your calories, let's say every 4 to 6 weeks. So every 4 to 6 weeks, you're looking at your new body weight, you're recalculating your calories. I've got a calorie calculator, link in the show notes so that you can go and use that. And from there, you can start to make incremental changes to your calorie intake so that it's reflective of your lighter body weight as you go through this process. Now, for a lot of people, that's probably overkill. It's probably not what you need to do. I think that most people will make progress without having to change their calories every 4 to 6 weeks. But some people are really anal, type A personalities, and want to be into the detail, into the minutiae. Feel free to go do that if you want to. However, I personally don't think it's probably necessary for everybody to go to that extent. The other option you could do is simply track your average weight on a weekly basis. And by that, I mean, take probably 4 or more weigh-ins every day and then average them out across the week. Then look at trending that over time. As you see weight loss start to slow and that curve start to peter out, that's the time where you might want to jump in and start to adjust your calories. You don't need to do anything with macros and shit like that, just adjust those calories. But remember that adherence is also that huge factor as well. So be honest with yourself. Is that petering out of your weight and fat loss to do with the fact that you're actually mentally struggling to stick to your diet? And it's actually down to adherence, not anything to do with this reduction in body weight and body fat. Make sure that you're being honest with yourself throughout this process, because if you're honest, then you get the right answer. If you're dishonest and you're trying to fool yourself, then you end up with the wrong answer and you end up in this loop of actual just complete shit of never making any progress whatsoever. When we're talking about metabolic adaptation, as we talked about at the start, it's kind of where your body is reducing some of the activity that you're doing subconsciously. You're not really aware of it. Now, the key thing you can do here is measure your step count. If you know your step count before you started your fat loss phase, let's say that is 10,000 steps. Now, if you weren't tracking that, that might reduce. It might reduce to 8,000, 7,000, because your body is just feeling more lethargic and you don't get out and do all of that activity. Obviously, if you're monitoring your step count, you can set a target to say, well, I'm going to hit the 10,000 target, or I'm going to slightly increase it so that I'm trying to mitigate some of these metabolic adaptations. That's the real simple way you can look at it. Other things that you can do is you could increase cardio. You could do more activity in the gym of some description that suits you. You could also reduce your food intake. Essentially, whichever one of those 3 options or blend of those 3 options you want to do, the process you're going through is adjusting your calorie deficit. You're trying to make sure that calorie deficit stays at a level that sees you can see continued progress. Now, for some people, reducing food intake will not be practical. Maybe you're already on low calories and therefore reducing calories even further might just send you over the edge. It might send you into some sort of murderous spree and start to maim those around you. So that might not be practical. It also might not be practical to increase the amount of activity you're doing. Maybe you're a busy person at work, career, home life, all those sorts of things. Someone saying, yeah, just throw in 3 hours of cardio a week is easy for someone to say, but actually trying to make that fit into your lifestyle could be a fucking impossibility. So again, look at the situation that you're in and adapt what I'm saying in order to fit where you're at right now. If those are the situations you're in, you can't really logically do those things and stick to the plan, probably a diet break is the best place for you. Now that could take the form of a refeed. Now refeed is not 24 hours where you eat whatever the fuck you want. It is a 3 to 7, I would say, day period where you purposely increase calories up to maintenance or maybe even into a small surplus, mainly favoring carbohydrate in terms of what that calorie increase consists of. And this is therefore trying to basically re-establish some of those movements that your body has kind of down-regulated, let's say. Now, you could also extend that to a more longer diet break of, let's say, 2 weeks or more. So 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever you want, up to maintenance. That gives your body this chance to, I hate to use the word reset, but I am going to use it, kind of reset so that you see a little bit of a hormonal change and potentially your exercise levels go up in terms of your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, so like walking and shit. That starts to increase, so the calories burn comes back, you feel better, maybe your gym performance is better, you push harder when you do your workouts, all that sort of good stuff can have a positive effect. Also, there's a mental break that goes on from there as well. But basically, then you dive back into your fat loss phase if that's what you want to do, and then you should be starting from a more positive base that allows you to make more continued progress in the future. Again, there's no real hard and fast rules about how long a diet break should be, but it's kind of what's right for you. Judge that situation you're in right now, what's logical, what's going to help you move forward, and then do that. So to quickly summarize, your weight loss plateau could be down to a number of different factors. Now, this could be the fact that you just simply weigh less and therefore you need less calories to exist on this earth. In that case, maybe a calorie adjustment is required at the right time. What's also going on is metabolic adaptation. So when you lose a certain amount of weight, the body then starts to maybe downregulate some functions, you feel more lethargic. That means that your calories burnt probably is reducing, therefore your calorie deficit is getting smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where you feel like everything is ground to a halt. Now, at that point, what you should probably do is monitor your step count, making sure that you're hitting whatever target you need to hit on a step count or trying to increase it a little bit more. You'd also want to potentially increase the amount of exercise that you do and or decrease the amount of food that you're eating. That aside, if those things are impossible and you can't fit those into your lifestyle, then a diet break of anywhere between 3 to 5, 7 days as a refeed or 2 weeks or longer is the best route for you to go down. Because remember, this whole process is a long-term thing. You don't have to achieve all of your goals in 90 days. That may be true for some people who want to do these transformations and can actually do that and be in the position of a start position where that's actually practical. But actually, whether you achieve your goals in 90 days, 180 days, a year, 2 years, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as you are progressing in the right direction. So don't kind of pound yourself into the ground by having to be in a calorie deficit consistently for 3 years. Make sure that you look at this process objectively, do the right thing for you in this right situation and go from there. And if you need some help making those calorie adjustments, then you can click the link in the show notes so that you can access my free online calorie calculator. Super simple to use. Tap in your details. It'll instantly give you how many calories you need to achieve your goal. Plus there's some cool little slider things you can use to calculate protein, fat, and all those sorts of good things. Plus, if you're a beginner, you can access a free 4-week training program as well. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.